Dybala! He is something else. Di Lorenzo, and still Di Lorenzo! The captain brings the house down. Partenopea champions once again, but the 33-year wait will now officially come to an end.
Ciao ragazzi, and welcome to another edition of Serie Sit Down, World Football Index's podcast for your Calcio to go. I'm Frank Crivello. He's Richard Carmen. Ciao, Richard.
Ciao, Frank. We got a lot to talk about tonight, don't we?
Oh my gosh. As always, Serie A is the gift that keeps on giving as we approach the holiday season.
Yeah.
They're getting a head start on doing some gift giving, aren't they?
Oh yeah. No panettone for some individuals.
Yeah, we've already seen. We'll be talking about that a little bit, won't we? We've got some managers that have already been. We talked about Paulo Sousa earlier. Zanetti at Empoli. What's the fella's name at Udinese, please? Sotil. Dionisi still has a job, doesn't he?
He does for now.
Yep. For now. So those are some interesting ones, and then one a little closer to the top that we're going to get in and break down. So we're excited to have the chance to chat with all of you about that. We have plenty to discuss. We'll have a number of topics. Kind of go down by those. We're kind of, now that we're at another international break, pivotal moment for the Azzurri. By the way, we're going to talk about the Azzurri call-ups. We're going to talk about a possible starting lineup for the game on, I believe, Friday against North Macedonia, and speculate a little bit on the method behind Spalletti's madness if he does indeed go with that 4-3-3 and what it'll mean against North Macedonia. And then we'll round it all off with the world's most popular hashtag game, Who Won Calcio Twitter. It's still Twitter to us. We're going to let this die a death. So for all of you out there. Yeah. Also, hey, if you are watching us for the first time, please subscribe so you hit the notification bell. This way you know when we're going to be live. Generally, we're live on Tuesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern. So please, and if you're listening to us on the podcast route, and if you ever want to catch us live, that's when we are generally on Tuesday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'd love to get more people in the chat to kind of talk about the Calcio with us. So if you're not doing anything and you're stateside or in Canada on a Tuesday night, hey, come and join us. And I know there's a lot of hockey that goes on Tuesday night, so maybe our Canadian friends are probably a little preoccupied with that. But there's no American football really on Tuesdays unless you're into the college football, unless you're into the MACtion, and you want to watch like Akron playing Toledo. And with all due respect, I think these are teams like kind of around where Lisi lives.
I'd rather watch Roma against Lazio 0-0.
Yeah. Hey, wow, what a waste of 2 hours of everybody's life that was. So we probably could have called that before, and I think we said 1-1. We were trying to be generous and give them goals, but that didn't even happen. So that was a shame. But we'll touch on that. I think we'll probably, because the game was so drab, we'll just touch on the state of those two teams, in our topic. So we'll mix in how these guys did in Europe and kind of where they sit with respect to all of that. But lots to talk about, but it begins at the beginning, Richard. Two teams who are in the spotlight with managers in the hot seat, two of the top teams in Serie A. In fact, the last two Serie A winners, with managers in the hot seat. One decides to hang on to their manager. One decides to let go of their manager. So in their games this weekend, Milan, a 2-2 draw against Lecce. Of course, we're talking about Stefano Pioli. They jump out to a 2-0 lead. For some reason, and I might be injury related, but Calabria has to come off at halftime, and he does not bring on Alessandro Florenzi, who he happens to have on his bench at his disposal and actually plays right back. Who does he bring on? He brings on Yunus Musa, and everything completely fell apart from that substitution. He loses Sansoni on the second ball on the corner, and then he has the miserable touch that leads to the Lecce counter to make it the 2-2 draw. And then that's when it dawned on Pioli, hey, I better put Florenzi in. He knows how to play that position, and I'll move Musa back into the midfield. That was his moment that he decided, yeah, I should probably change that. Not when it was 2-1. He waited till it was 2-2. He waited till the 2 points were dropped. And then on the other hand, you had what's going to turn out to be Rudi Garcia's last match as Napoli manager, losing at home 1-0 to Empoli. As you know, an Empoli team that's playing a little bit better under Andrea Azzoli, but that is as inexcusable as it gets if you're Napoli and if you're the defending Serie A champions. So here's what I said, Richard, when I went to Twitter today, went to X, whatever you want, whatever Elon Musk wants to call it now. This is the Serie A managerial experiment. Okay, we've got all of these Milan Twitter Pioli out types that like to chase me. They call me out whenever Milan doesn't get a result. They're awfully quiet when Milan win. By the way, I'm going to call that. Let's call that.
So they were quiet in the midweek.
Yeah, they were quiet in the midweek after the PSG game, but they're happy to call me out when Milan don't get the results at Lecce, which. Ask Lazio how playing at Lecce worked way back at the beginning of the season, and ask most teams when they go to Lecce how it works for them. But the fashion with which the points were dropped was very disappointing. 2-0 up, got to figure out how you're going to go on and win the game. But so they're clamoring for Pioli's head every time something goes wrong. Napoli fans have been unhappy with Rudi Garcia seemingly since the start of the season. So we have the experiment here laid out before you. And what did we say? We haven't really focused a whole lot on Garcia going. We know that Napoli fans weren't unhappy or were unhappy. But
ADL was very unhappy.
ADL in particular was very unhappy. They're the biggest Napoli supporter out there, right? So we got Pioli, who's on thin ice, but Redbird says he still has his job. Okay, and you and I talked about this multiple times. Who are you going to get? Who's going to make Milan better than where they're currently sitting? Third in the Scudetto and only 1 point out of the qualifying places in the Champions League group. But at the time we were talking about is they were bottom of the Champions League group, 2 points out. So they made some progress there. So Pioli stays, Garcia goes, and Walter Mazzarri is now brought in to rescue this Napoli side. So Milan is the control and Napoli is the sample in the Serie A managerial science experiment here. And I'm just going to start by saying this. I can comfortably tell you that Milan will finish ahead of Napoli in the table.
Okay.
But let's go to the decisions here and let's focus on Napoli first. Your reaction, Garcia out, Mazzarri in.
Well, I think the first part is the funniest part, that ADL, Aurelio De Laurentiis, announced the signing of Walter Mazzarri before letting go Rudi Garcia. Officially, which I think is very comical and it explains a lot what's happened lately with Napoli. But yeah, man, it's we talked about this Rudi Garcia, I don't know if it was last week or a couple weeks ago, and we're like, we especially when ADL mouth started going off about Rudi Garcia saying he's an age manager, doesn't know the game anymore, it's all past him. It's like, dude, you hired him, but you had the notion that his time is short, is going to be gone. But we kept saying, who are you gonna bring in? Yeah, you're not going to win Scudetto maybe this year, but you're certainly a top 4 team. You have a super uber talented team that's gonna, it's one of the best teams in this league in terms of talent alone. Let it ride out. Maybe they'll figure themselves out and they're going to get it going. Obviously, the main thing with Napoli is that when they go to these big games in like Champions League, for example, they do well. Rudi Garcia is good in those situations. Against the team they should beat, other than this weekend, they usually do well. It's the teams at the top of the table which they've been struggling at, and that's really what separated them from the top, Inter and Juve from everybody else. And so with the loss, obviously, to Empoli, you figure ahead was going to roll, and it was Rudi Garcia. It's not going to be Osimhen. Osimhen's injured. It's not going to be Kvaratskhelia, who was on the bench to start the game. That's probably our first red flag that he's going to be gone. But yeah, the fact that they let him go, and then you heard all the different names, Igor Tudor and Walter Mazzarri were the names that came to the forefront. And then you hear the announcement of Walter Mazzarri. And before I get to my reaction, I do want to read a friend of the show, Zombo. I call him Zombo. If you look for him on Twitter, it is AILLIWRE. Anyway, he says, as a somewhat resident Partenopei, the sit-down chat, succinctly, Mazzarri is a caretaker for the rest of the year to hold a UCL spot. It's not a long-term solution, which in part is why I'd rather have this than go with whoever is out there with the money. We understand the situation, aren't expecting a Scudetto at this point. It's about stability and giving them time for a long-term successor starting next campaign. And by no means does this mean that the Partenopei are all on board with him as a caretaker. I'm neutral, but when understanding the adjusted goal, it makes sense with which many outside in the pundit land don't understand. When you read that, if that is the adjusted goal, it makes sense. But what have we said since this podcast has been going on for 8 years now, 8 years? The second coming of your favorite manager or favorite player never works out. Works out, right? No. As much as we watch, just look at the Azzurri for a second. Look at Lippi coming in in return. Didn't do anything. We would love to see all these returns happen and do well, but for the most part, it doesn't work out. Now, Walter Mazzarri had a great time under Napoli the first time. Obviously, he had that fantastic trio that he got to operate under. And they did some great things. They had a nice, 3-1 win against Chelsea in the Champions League at home. That was a great tie against them, the two-legged affair. But that was, 2016? How long ago was that? Does he still have it? All the teams that he's been on recently, they've either been in relegation or been really poor, like the Watford, the Cagliaris of the world. Does he still have it? Maybe he does. As time will tell. And if he's just there to be the stability and get them in that Champions League spot to the end of the season, okay, I understand that. It's probably better than Igor Tudor, in my opinion. However, don't hold your breath so fast because the top four is not a guaranteed thing. Atalanta, they're pretty good this year. Juve obviously doing old Juve things. And don't forget about the two Roman clubs, and maybe Bologna gets involved. Who knows? But the top four isn't a sure thing, right? Milan might not make the top four at this point. Who knows? But the fact that they brought in Rudi Garcia now, I understand why they did it so early because it gives them time to adjust, and you got the big winter coming up here. You got the international break to kind of get started with the acclimation. But I don't know. I'm going to be a wait and see. It was certainly shocking because I think both of us thought this wasn't going to happen just yet. It was going to maybe go through mid-season before this happens. I get why they win it. I know they win it after some big names. And if what Zombo is saying is that, hey, this is just a caretaker until they get their manager, that makes more sense than saying Walter Mazzarri for life, because I don't see that happening very well. And hey, Mazzarri could come in here and really right the ship and then play fantastic ball. It surprised us all. And I'm sure that's the Partenopei supporters want to see. It would be fun to see for the league, but I'm going to wait and see because I'm not convinced by any return of any manager to a club that they were at before. What about you?
Well, there's a 2.0 going on right now that's been pretty successful. That's Carlo Ancelotti at Real Madrid.
I've heard of him.
And the other 2.0 that I can recall that I would probably call relatively successful is Jose Mourinho's second stint at Chelsea, one in the Premier League. I believe won an FA Cup in there as well. So maybe that's not what Chelsea fans want, but I think when you, I would measure that as a success for a second, for a return. Yep. But I'll name some managers that have come back a second time that I think pretty highly of that it didn't work out. Arrigo Sacchi, we talked about that on this podcast. Fabio Capello came back to Milan a second time. That didn't work. Lippi a second time at Juventus. It was not okay. He got him to the Champions League final in 2003 against Milan. But it was certainly not the level of success that he enjoyed in the mid-90s when he had Del Piero, Zidane, the year that he won it with Ravanelli and Vialli and Paulo Sousa and Didier Deschamps. So, so Spalletti's second go at Roma was maybe equal to his first. So it certainly wasn't better. No. So yeah, the 2.0, and sometimes it doesn't work out with players either, And currently Griezmann's enjoying some success playing for the Atletico Madrid for a second stint, but you don't often see a lot of 2.0s go particularly well. And you can maybe say Ibrahimovic, but I think that his second stint was successful for the leadership that he provided off the pitch versus what he provided on it, or what he was able to do on it. So, Kaká's second stint at Milan was a disaster. He also, Sheva. So the list goes on. So to that effect, the odds are against Napoli doing anything substantial here the rest of the season, and what's the motivation for playing a guy that's just going to be a caretaker, right? This isn't going to be the voice that you hear going forward. So you got that to be concerned about. And is this a dressing room that has the maturity to be able to play through that? So lots of questions here. You can't just sit here and, Mazzarri comes in, and I do some of our Napoli friends are happy to see Mazzarri back. He's kind of a cult figure
for sure
with them. So, but
how many times does Rafa talk glowingly about Walter Mazzarri, right? So yeah, I understand that.
Yeah. Apex talking about Lukaku 2.0 at Chelsea. Yeah, I agree. So, and even Lukaku 2.0 at Inter, you could say wasn't what they hoped. It didn't deliver a Scudetto while he was there. It got to the Champions League final, but he might have gotten in the way of them tying that match. So, so that's what so that's what I think by and large you have to look forward to,
But look at it this way, because you also said it too with Pioli in Milan, is like, who of someone who they could rest their laurels on and say, you are our main guy through and through for the next several years, who's available right now? No one. The only guy is Conte. He's already rejected him twice. There's no one really ready. So maybe you wait until you find a caretaker, until you get to the summertime. Maybe more options become available, because the managers that you would want to be a long-term manager for your club are more than likely with a team right now. And so you're going to have to wait till it's off season so you can kind of, hopefully bring in some money and have them come into the league. So your team. So we'll see.
Well, that's just it. No one significant is coming right now when they don't have a window to work with to bring in, to recruit the players that they want, and a preseason training to implement and install the way they want to do things. Okay, you carry out the way things were the rest of the way, and that's really that's really what you're stuck with. So, so I don't, certainly the Napoli supporters are going to cheer. They're going to enjoy Mazzarri being on the touchline again. I am concerned about the level of success that they're actually going to have. I think, and we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it here shortly, but I think top four is at risk for these guys. I think you really have to say that top four could end up getting out of reach at some point this season, but we'll see. We might come back to this podcast and I'm either right or wrong on that, but that's certainly something that, that should be Napoli's ambition for the rest of the season, is lock up top four and make this job attractive for the next manager that's coming in.
There's probably only two teams, and it's still early in the season to say this, but it's probably only two teams that have the top four locked. Everyone else, it's a crapshoot who's going to make it. And so I want to give a shout out to Apex here, because I want to talk a little bit about Spaletti versus Rudi Garcia. And Apex put me onto the Obi One Podcast, John Obi Mikel's podcast, and they had Victor Osimhen on there as a guest. Very entertaining podcast. I recommend you go listen to the whole thing. It's just a fantastic thing. But they asked Victor Osimhen, about the Scudetto year and how everything was, and told us to describe Spalletti. And he said, Spalletti lived at the stadium 7 months of the year. It's like this guy lived and breathed Napoli. And some examples, he said, like he sent him the whole team a WhatsApp text that kind of said everything about the Napoli, like why this is why you should love Napoli, the city of Napoli, and listed everything about it. But they said Spalletti knew everything about the city, knew everything about the club, and he tried to instill that into all the players to really want it. And then a good example that Victor Osimhen said as well is that in the game with I think 8 games to go or so against Juventus, it was 0-0 at halftime, and he thought, going into the locker room, that Spalletti was going to yell at all of them, and all he did was he kept quiet, looked everyone in the face, and he says, look, he kind of gave a motivation speech, was saying, look, I've never won a championship before. Many of you have never won a championship before. This is your time to make history. You win at Napoli, you will go down in history as one of the greats.
Mm-hmm.
Go out and do it. And they went out against Juventus. Raspadori got the game winner there. They obviously went on and went to Scudetto. They went back to Napoli after that game, and freaking 15,000 fans are out there, celebrating them. And so Victor Osimhen talked about how Spalletti really understood Napoli, understood the team and the city, and that's what they kind of lived and thrived through. Rudi Garcia, on the other hand, you don't get that vibe.
No.
Someone in the chat just said, I think Patrick Kendrick, one of the commentators for Serie A, he had mentioned that Rudi Garcia was reluctant to watch Napoli games from last season. Like, why wouldn't you? That was a recipe for domination in the league. Why wouldn't you do that? Right. It seems like Rudi Garcia is so detached from the city, from the team. He's obviously having some quarrels with Osimhen and Kvaratskhelia and some other guys. It just seemed like there's always this rift, obviously with ADL, right? But the difference between Spalletti and how he got this team to be just this a historic team from last year, they just dominated, and then to Rudi Garcia's team where they had the same team basically, and they just have all these hiccups along the way, and it's a contrast of what Spalletti did. You really have to appreciate what Spalletti did last year, because we said it last week, it's just a magical season. It absolutely was. You can tell now by what Rudi Garcia hasn't done, right? So It's interesting. Go check the podcast out. Shout out to Apex for mentioning that to me, because that was a wonderful podcast.
Yeah. 100% there. And I mean, there is, especially with a club like Napoli and a city that really embraces that. I mean, that city embraces that club.
Oh yeah.
More than any other city in Europe. I mean, the love affair that the city has for the team, and you can't, can you say that about, you could probably say that about Barcelona. You could probably say that about Bayern Munich. But what's different is that those cities still have other teams that play. Like in that region in Catalonia, you got Espanyol, and not everybody's a Barcelona fan in Barcelona. There's Espanyol supporters. In Bayern Munich, there's 1860 Munich. And in Real Madrid, it's Real or Atleti. In Milan, it's Milan or Inter. I was in Milan for a derby. And I'll tell you what, it was, that day, the day of walking in the Duomo and just kind of going around and seeing the sights and just kind of doing the people watching. It was literally red and black and blue and black. Okay?
Yeah, everyone you meet is either red or black, they're red or blue. But Osimhen, explained it so fantastically how passionate the fans are in Naples. They adore the team, they adore the city, and it really is something special. He loves playing there. So just really great to hear his perspective. We always see the outside perspective, the fans' perspective, but hearing his perspective of how he embraces it, it's wonderful to hear.
Yeah, I mean, as far as cities and love affair with one club, Napoli might be tops in Europe when it comes to that. And there's another Italian city might be right there in the top 5, Fiorentina. But the rest of Europe, I'd be interested if people are listening to this, if they have ideas and other, what cities really, really embrace the club that represents their city, more than, as much as Napoli, or who comes close.
I will say this, John Obi Mikel, who obviously was from Chelsea for the longest time, he even when Chelsea went there in the Champions League, he had never seen an atmosphere like the Stadio Maradona. Well, now it's called Stadio Maradona, but the atmosphere in the Champions League was just amazing, and it goes to that same point. Yeah.
So, and if you're a manager going to a club like that, you better embrace that, and you better be about that. I mean, I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and a 2-hour drive north, there's the Green Bay Packers. Okay, in the National Football League, and that's the only game in town up in that part of the state of Wisconsin. And I'll tell you what, that city embraces that team. And if you're coming to be the head coach of the Green Bay Packers, you better be about that community, and you better be about what's around it and that sort of thing.
Exactly.
So, and you better get that. So. And it's Argentina or Brazil team, certainly, but we're talking about Europe. I mean, I mean Boca and Boca Juniors. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It's just, there was a Netflix, there was a documentary on Boca.
Yeah, it was a good one.
Check that out. That was amazing. Almost turned me into it. Like, I mean, I'll watch a Boca game just for the atmosphere at the Bombonera.
Oh yeah.
So you might make an argument for, but Partizan Belgrade is there, but Crvena Zvezda. I mean, the passion in that stadium for that team.
Yeah.
Eintracht might be. I mean, I don't know if what's Eintracht Frankfurt. I mean, it's just fascinating. I mean, we're kind of getting
Warsaw. Yes, a lot of few teams out there that you can distinctly relate to the fans.
Yeah. We're drifting off topic here.
Yes, we are.
But it's an interesting conversation to have. I mean, if you have other clubs that you support that you feel that way about that club, and in the sense that Napoli, the city of Napoli feels about their club, we'd like to hear those ideas. Schalke, yeah.
That's you, Eric.
Okay.
It's true. He's not wrong.
Yeah, this is true. You got the Schwarzgelben out in that area though too. So
never heard of him.
Yeah, I know. They're only playing Milan twice. But let's come back now to the team that kept their manager, Stefano Pioli. And I think that Redbird's line of thinking is consistent with what really needs to be the practical answer here. What's the problem? What trouble are we really in? We're in third. We're still in it in the Champions League. Why would we want to make this change now? Is kind of the attitude that they're taking. Okay, 100%. We've had some bad luck with some results that we probably should have won. We've dropped 4 points that shouldn't have happened, because have they not dropped those points, they're still in third, but they get a lot more separation from fifth than they're currently in. And you know me and Richard, if you're listening to this podcast, we're behind where Redbird's thinking here. I mean, we've said there's just, who are you going to get? Who are you going to retread, or who are you going to get that the players are going to believe in to rally and see this thing out and keep a Champions League place for next season, keep top four and that sort of thing. Right now, your best option is the guy you've got.
Right. And the thing it's not to say we're not frustrated. I am extremely frustrated watching this team week in and week out. It's a funny statistic, and I haven't fact checked this yet, so take this with a grain of salt. But Milan Post posted this. Without Krunic this season, Milan are four wins, 1 draw.
Yeah.
With Krunic in the lineup, 3 losses, 2 draws. So maybe Krunic is the problem. Pioli's pet, is the problem. But no, it's a lot of things going on. I mean, both teams suffer from inability to score at times. We saw Napoli had a million chances against Empoli, failed. Berisha was stood on his head. Milan had a million opportunities against Lecce, same thing. And every game, it seems like they come close. But it's those things that really frustrate you when you're up 2-0. You should be winning this game, and they come back, and really that's a loss because Hristovic scored a goal in the last minute end of the game. It was a poor call that kind of reverses to make it 2-2. So I feel for Lecce fans, because that should have been a win for them. It was completely wrong call. But there's absolute frustration with Pioli. But I don't. My frustration isn't at the point where I think he's got to go, because who do you bring in? There's nobody in that you can bring in. I can't think of a caretaker that I think would do a good job. It would be the same job he's doing now, which is top 4. That's the ultimate goal, which Redbird wants. And then admit, like Napoli's going to do in the summer, you can reevaluate. And if you want to make a move then. But it'd only be more dramatic. I mean, and again, we have to see how the results happen at the end of the season. Obviously, Redbird want to go deep in Champions League, I would imagine, and also a top 4. They want a top 4. Scudetto is great, but they want a top 4 and go deep in Champions League, because that's where the money is. But I don't know. I think Milan made the better choice in the situation. But again, I understand where Napoli coming from. Rudi Garcia didn't get it. He was nothing compared to. It was night and day between him and Spaletti. So I understand why he had to go there. But Pioli, I still have the faith in him, even though he pisses me off so many times every week.
We got and Milan Twitter and the Pioli outcry, a fraction of you, not all of you.
No. Please
stop sitting here thinking that Ignacio Abate, is going to work out just like Pep Guardiola worked out for Barcelona. Do you know how many times that's worked where a youth manager steps into the big seat and takes over? Once. Man by the name of Pep Guardiola.
And Zidane
well for Barcelona. Zidane. Yeah, okay, so twice. All right? Twice in the entire history that it's been tried. Okay, at 2 very special clubs where they have the resources to overcome the relative lack of experience that manager has. Milan is not, they don't have the resources that Barcelona did when they promoted Guardiola, or Real Madrid when they promoted Zidane. Okay, so get off it. It's not going to. Okay, I like Ignacio Abate, but let the man make his own way. Let him make his own path. Let him make his own career. Okay, don't throw him into a situation and then all of a sudden, because I know how you guys are, 15 matches later, you regret it and you want him out.
So I'm gonna caveat or venture over here just a little bit. So Milan did not change their manager, but they did bring in or are trying to bring in Ibrahimovic.
Yeah.
And so again, it's kind of what we said earlier. You said earlier about like, the thing with Ibra, what he was so good about with Milan's Scudetto run was that the backroom stuff. He kept the locker room straight. He had obviously added his wisdom for the young strikers, young players. And so that's kind of what this move is all about. He's not going to, from what you propose hearing is that, yeah, he wants to have, he wants to be one of the team managers, but not have any say in the market or anything. He just wants to be there, a backroom guy, be part of the team, and kind of help this team get back that mentality that they lost. They clearly lost because right now the only people they got, you got Calabria as one of the senior players there, and Chiar. Outside of that, it's all young, all new faces on the team. So I understand that move. It's a better move than bringing a new manager. I think we'll see if it doesn't work. Give it to them both, I guess.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think it's if you can make it work and it's something that Ibrahimovic wants to do.
Hansi
yeah, they try to compare Abate to explain why he should take over, and then one Milan Twitter guy that ends up in my feed wanted to highlight how Abate got pissed off that his youth team slowed down after a 2-0 lead, and showed that that he was demonstrative, and that's not why he should take over, and that's not why Pioli should be. I mean, just reaching at this point. But anyway. We'll see. I mean, we're not going to feel or know the influence that Ibrahimovic has. Nobody is. It's all going to be behind the scenes. It's all going to be in the back rooms. What I don't want this to become is a situation like when Milan had Zvonimir Boban, and then Boban just went to the press and ran his mouth and got himself fired.
Yeah.
So, so that's...
No, Ibra could do that.
And sure he could. But considering what he means to the club and considering what he means to a large percentage of those players, new signings that didn't play with him notwithstanding, I think it makes sense. I think that there'll be some comfort for some of these players that they can lean to a guy like that. So Zava, yeah.
So to kind of wrap this up, and it kind of ties us together. So for Napoli and Milan looking forward, say they both are in the hunt for a new manager. One of the names was just mentioned, Hansi Flick. Who would Hansi Flick be a better fit for if he were to go one of those clubs? Not saying he's going to, but it was a question posed on Twitter. Would he be better fit at Milan or would it be a better fit at Napoli?
Milan.
Milan.
So? And because I think that when you see some of Pioli's tactical characteristics, he likes to do a lot of high line and pressing. What were Hansi Flick's Bayern teams really good at, especially the one that won the treble? Yeah. They high line because they had two fast center backs that could, and then you had Alphonso Davies, who's faster than anybody on a football pitch, that can make the recovery runs and that can get back. And he can train Thiaw and Tomori, to the same characteristics. I don't know if he would turn Theo Hernandez into a better defender, but he would demand that same kind of performance. So, I see it there. I don't know if Napoli have the defenders that, like Rahmani and Nathan and those guys, to me, are not high-line center backs. No. I think they're very easy to beat over the top if you put them in that role, where I think the players are there at Flick's disposal to play in a similar way that he did at Bayern Munich. What would you say?
I think he would do well at both, but I think if you ask me who would do better at, I agree with you. I think Milan would. Napoli do have the better midfield, obviously, that would help, and I'm sure he would love to have that attack that's over there. But I agree with you. I think Hansi Flick, with the pressing that he likes to do and kind of schemes that he likes to draw up, it would be a little bit better fit with Milan. So I think he would have better success. I think he'd be successful either way because I think highly of him. But the fit is better with Milan, certainly, I think, in this regard.
But coming back to Mazzarri real quick, first 4 games in charge at Napoli, at Atalanta, at Real Madrid, hosting Inter, at Juventus.
Oh, could get 0 points out of those.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So, and I believe Milan get Fiorentina when they come back at home. So we actually got some decent games, and we've got the DerbyDItalia that's also going to fall when they come back from the break, Inter and Juve. So,
and Dominic, the Milan lab has always been terrible. It's not just his last 4 years; it's been forever since the Pato days, even before that. But anyway, back to you, Frank.
Okay. Well, why don't you tell us about the equivalent of, let's just call it what it was, a siesta on a football pitch.
I assume you're talking about the DerbyDellaCapitale.
Yes.
That game was an interesting game. Obviously, this is a heated rivalry between two clubs who don't like each other one so bit. They share a city, very similar to the Milanese clubs. But everyone was jazzed up for this matchup. Obviously, the two managers do not like each other, Maurizio Sarri and Jose Mourinho. Lots of words exchanged before the match. Was very entertaining to hear. Get you ready for the match. The atmosphere was fantastic to start the game. You watched the first half, and everyone's saying it was a bad derby, and to an extent it was, but I thought the first half was very intense. I mean, there was a million yellow cards in that first half. It's what a derby is supposed to be. It's supposed to be tight. It's supposed to be heated, and a possibility of red card at any moment because it looked like you're going to get a red card in that game. But then you come out in the second half, and both teams had their opportunities, but it was loaded with errors. I mean, I thought the defenses played well, but the offense, I mean, the strikers in particular, Immobile was trash. Lukaku was trash. Dybala with indecision. Dybala did like 90% of the work and then blew it. And then same thing on the other side, Luis Alberto did the same thing. I thought Guendouzi had a pretty strong game. I thought overall, some players here and there, did some good performances. The goalkeepers, did well, but it, as good as that first half was for me, just to watch as a neutral, the overall game was drab in a bit because you want to see goals. I wanted to see a red card or blood or something. The first half certainly had those implications. The second half, it kind of staled out and they kind of canceled each other. There's two teams who knew what each other's strengths were, and they just kept canceling it out. And the attacks for both teams were piss poor. They couldn't connect passes in the final third, and just a turnover after turnover. It looked like you had some great momentum going back and forth, but then it gets stopped as soon as you get into the opposition's goal. And so frustrating game to watch for sure. I can't even imagine if you're a supporter because you want to beat the other, but 0-0, I think at the end of the day, both teams will take that draw. Certainly Roma being the road team, taking a draw there, and no goals were given up. But man, that was hard to watch. And it wasn't as drab as, I don't feel as bad about watching the game, even though I lost 2 hours of my life watching that game as some others. But I think the first half was much better than the second half. Second half, it kind of just tailed off. They kept canceling each other out, and the strikers were just so infuriating to watch because every time you saw something good happening, they'd blow it. I mean, one of the key examples is when Guendouzi made this fantastic pass to Thierry Immobile, who splits the defense, and then just mistimes the pass, and then by the time he gets on the ball, Mancini's there to clean it up. And so it's stuff like that all game long. You kept watching, like, what are we doing here? It seemed like the strikers weren't ready for this, but everybody else was. What were your thoughts on Derby?
If you look at the heat maps for Lazio, you'd swear Ciro Immobile was the only player in Roma's penalty area for Lazio. I mean,
yeah.
That's pathetic. I mean, yeah, Patrick was in there on corners. Matteo Guendouzi was in there on corners. And Romagnoli was in there on corners, and that's about it. Felipe Anderson played 82 minutes in this game and never got into Roma's penalty area.
Non-existent, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how are you a winger and not doing something to influence the game tactically in that regard? And then there's a thought. Okay, Anderson plays wider, gets the touchline chalk on his boots, and opens that space for Lazzarri to go a little more inverted and maybe find his way into the box from the right back position because Lazzarri's capable of doing that. Lazzarri never got in the box either. Like, it was just like hope Immobile gets to one. That was Lazio's game plan.
Yeah.
Okay. And then when you look at Roma, certainly Dybala, Lukaku, certainly had more intentions, but to your point, wasteful. There were 15 combined shots in this game. Napoli didn't score against Empoli. They shot it 18 times. Okay, just for perspective.
Yeah.
So just to tell you, just so if you're wondering, yeah, that's low. So there just wasn't hard. There wasn't any endeavor from Lazio, and there's only maybe a little bit more endeavor from Roma, and at best. So incredibly disappointing, a terrifying advert for Serie A. But it's it's what they got, and of course 0-0 is a fair result when nobody's trying to score, Vincent.
Yeah, I think Vincent brought up a good point, though. I think both teams feared losing the derby. Both teams have lost big in this game, and so I think that's what they were fearing the most. And you could see it in the second half. First half, it seemed a little bit more open. Like I said, like you said, Lazio really weren't venturing forward, but I thought Guendouzi was trying to be a playmaker in this game. I thought for Lazio. And once the second half hit, is like, hey, let's not lose the game. Obviously, to someone's point, I think Eric's point is like, all Mourinho likes to do is just play the low block and settle for a 0-0 game, head into late, and then try to hit them with a winner. Roma have the most. I think they have the most goals in the last 10 minutes of a game in the league, and so that's what they're always going to do. Try to get you with a late winner, and yeah, it never lived up to the billing. It certainly did in the first half. I thought it was okay, but it's not what you want to see. You want to see goals in this, and it's not just a product of the DerbyDellaCapitale. We saw this how many years with the Derby Milano, where both teams just played stagnant football. Doesn't how many times we had Nemo on here? We're like that was a boring derby, right? It's happened over time, and you expect this in a derby, but man, get some goals, fight, get some red cards. I mean, they played scared almost, and they didn't want to lose. To Vincent's point, and I agree about that.
At some point, and okay, so let's talk about the state of the capital teams, because we probably don't talk about them as much as we should. Lazio have 13 goals in 12 games so far this season in Serie A. They only scored, I think they only beat Feyenoord 1-0 in Champions League. Granted, and some of this might be a product of putting the priority on trying to qualify from, a relatively tough Champions League group. Celtic, they should win their games against, but Feyenoord's a pain in the ass for them. And Atletico Madrid's just really good right now. So there might be some of that going on, and that when that subsides and if they qualify, then they can loosen up, and then you start seeing a string of league games where they can put their focus on it. But this isn't Saudi ball. Saudi ball has just completely, and I don't know, it's kind of funny. I almost dare to say it, but I think Saudi got Juve'd. He played this attractive football at Napoli. He played breathtaking football at Napoli, scored a bunch of goals, goes to Chelsea, does some similar things there, wins the Europa League, gets the Juve job, and goes to – and it might as well have been Allegri managing the team. And it's like ever since that, Saudi's been much more cautious as a manager. You've got Felipe Anderson, who is in his 2.0 with Lazio, and it's not nearly as good as his 1.0. Yeah. It's okay, but it's not what he was the first time around. Pedro, you've got old wingers. You brought in this Isaacson kid, and I saw him play for Michelin, and I looked at him, and I said, this guy's going to be a player. Yeah. It's time to let him loose and see what he can do. He looked confident in the derby too. The couple minutes that he got, Charlie, he's taking on 1, 2, 3 guys at a time. So yeah, give more minutes. Yeah. And then as for Roma, this is Roma. This is what they are. Okay, they've got all of their pieces back. They struggled against, and I think you certainly got to give credit where credit is due. Patrick and Romagnoli as a partnership was really good. Guendouzi was solid in midfield. I think Cataldi was okay. Yeah. They did a nice job of breaking some things up, but you certainly are expecting more. And Roma still got a couple of players that they want to get back yet, Pellegrini being one of them. For sure. Spinazzola, you have him wide where he can do some damage and create something. they're trying to make something out of Sardar Azmoun, and I'm not sold that he's a good Serie A player yet. I mean, he's just got into the league, and I like to give these guys a little bit of a chance. But I haven't seen it from him yet. But this is Roma. This is what Mourinho's going to do with this Roma team. They're going to grind you out, and they're going to look for, the few guys that can help decide a game, like a Lukaku or a Dybala, a Spinazzola, when you get it in the wide areas. So I think clearly if there's a team that's going to be happier with this result, it should be Roma.
Yeah.
And when you're looking at their form all of a sudden, they're trending, in terms of results, kind of back into the ascendancy after a disastrous start.
Yeah.
They had that 1-0 defeat to Inter that sits there in a 5-game, in their last 5 games, that had it not been for one lapse of concentration, that would have been a draw too.
Yeah. No, I mean, they've scored double the goals that Lazio scored, basically.
Yeah.
It's both teams were, in relegation fodder for a long time, and now both teams are basically in the top 10 at the moment. And so I think Roma is this is what Roma is. They're gonna hit you on the counterattack. Obviously, the games where they're the favorites, play one of the smaller teams, they're gonna have more possession. They're gonna take more chances, be more risk avert, take more risks. But games like this is when they're gonna be risk avert. They're not gonna open up too much. They're gonna hope for keep it tight and then catch you on a break. Gonna catch you late when you're not paying attention. And this is what Mourinho's MO is, and this is what now this Roma team is for having. You see what they do in the late games now. They got, I think, in the last 2-3 years with Mourinho, they've got 20-something goals in the last 10 minutes of games, which is, again, this is the MO. This is what Mourinho wants. He wants to keep it tight, doesn't want to give up goals, and then finds a way to get out of there. Right? I mean, the Chelsea clubs to an extent did this, especially in the big games. And so, yeah, I expect more of this from Roma. They need to do better on the final third. I think, again, they did so well for like 90% of the play, and then get to the box and they fluff it up, because I thought Dybala had some magical plays in that game, and then loses the ball something silly, and then Lukaku tries to drive up the pitch, carrying guys all over him. He did well. Patrick, I thought, did well, marking him with the muscle. I think Romagnoli is like, yeah, you take him, bro. I'm not going to take him. But again, you get into the box and they couldn't figure it out, and so they gotta do something better. Than Lazio, to your point, it was just like, give it to Immobile and let him do something. But Immobile was the biggest weakness on that team in that game, because when they did get it up forward to him, he messed it up completely. He would miss the pass, miss the shot, miss the run completely. He was getting frustrated. He was trying to make some dives and get some calls. I thought the Roma defense was very good in this game. Mancini and Dica and Llorente, I thought did well. They did well.
Yeah.
And they got fiery with him. A couple of opportunities where Llorente is going after Immobile, and Renato Sanchez getting involved. You love seeing that. Pedro, obviously, with the shenanigans. So yeah, it was an interesting game, but both teams are getting better. But Roma has the current better trend, as you say. I agree with that.
I want to jump ahead of a couple of topics here and just kind of tie this with the Capital Derby, because Roma are sitting in 7th, okay, and Lazio are sitting in 10th. Okay, and you got right now 5 through 10. You've got Atalanta, Fiorentina, Roma, Bologna, Monza, Lazio in that order. Tell me the team that out of those 6 is best equipped to snatch a top 4 place, if you had to pick one. You know what my answer is going to be, because it's who I predicted, but I want to hear what you have to say.
Of those teams, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, the 2 most equipped teams, I think. I mean, Lazio, who I picked second this year, I should be picking them.
You got to pick one.
I know. One team currently. Oh man, it's probably Roma. I mean, Fiorentina has glimpses, of some good and some bad. Atalanta as well. Lazio, again, I like Lazio's makeup. Maybe not necessarily how they've been playing lately or start the season, but Mourinho, like Allegri, they focus on defense, and defense wins championships. Defense will get you further, and I think Roma have the talent. They got most of their pieces, most of them, not all of them, and they're playing what their manager wants the most out of most of those teams, I think.
I picked Roma to finish fourth, so I'm going to say Roma, and I think it's for that very reason. To me, I think they're the most organized and they're the most tactically astute of the 6 teams, which over the course of these remaining 26 games is going to matter. Okay? I see talk in the chat about Atalanta. I still think they're flaky enough.
When they're on, they're good. When they're on, they are very good. They're absolutely top 4. But you mentioned they're flaky. And they have these moments, I guess, like Udinese. Granted, they have a new manager bump, but there's times this season Atalanta playing against the smaller teams. You're like, what's going on with them? They should be killing this team. They're not. So I get it, but I agree with you.
Fiorentina struggled defensively, and it's evident because they have the most goals allowed of the teams in the top 10. But I've seen games where they're lucky to give up just the goals that they gave up. When I watch them play. I remember the Lecce game. I think they ended up drawing that game. It was Lecce had to come from behind. It was at the Franchi. It was earlier in the season. And when I watched this, Lecce should have won this game. They left some chances out there. Bologna just don't score enough. They have an effective way with which they play, but I don't think – not that it's not sustainable. I think they're going to be a top-half team. I think very highly of Bologna. I had them just outside the European places. 8th is exactly where I had them. So I believe that what you're seeing is what you're going to get from Bologna the rest of the way, and they're going to continue to get results. Monza's a good story right now. Certainly a lot of players with Serie A experience, and Lazio, they're weird to me right now. So it's got to be Roma.
But I will say this because the chat does bring a good point. Like, if you're Roma, you're not going to get in the top 4 with just draws. If you want to get in the top 4 for any of these teams, you're going to have to play better than Milan, Napoli, and Atalanta if you want to get in the top 4, and maybe get one of them, but you're not going to get all 3. So one of these teams are going to have to pick up their game to make it to the top 4 because that's a battle right there for those last 2 spots. First 2 spots, probably forget about it at this point, but if you play on the Seven Sisters, you need to get a result. You cannot get away in the top 4 with just draws. That's what faulted Roma and Lazio for so many years because they beat everyone in the league, and then when it came out of the Seven Sisters, they couldn't beat anybody, and they just missed out on the top 4. And so again, you need a win against the Seven Sisters.
Were you surprised that Osimhen was preferred to El Shaarawy as a substitute in that derby, given some of the form that El Shaarawy has been in?
The only thing I can think of was didn't Roma play in Europe last week? So maybe he's exhausted from that. But
but I mean, he came on. I mean, Osimhen came on in the 82nd minute. You can't. El Shaarawy can't give you 8 minutes.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he's injured. El Shaarawy should always be starting or playing over Osimhen until Osimhen can prove that he is ready for Serie A, like you said. Because El Shaarawy's done it on with Roma. He's done it in late games. He's gotten some good chemistry with some of the attackers there. So it perplexes me. There has to be a reason. I assume that he didn't come on. Maybe he. I don't know. I'm not gonna assume what Mourinho thinks these days. Maybe Apex has a better idea than I do, but or maybe Vincent. But the Osimhen thing, I want to see Osimhen get minutes because I think there's a talent there. He has to get acclimated to the league. But before El Shaarawy, I'm with you. I don't see it.
I mean, and that's another reason. I mean, Mourinho's tactics suit this Roma team, and then he has the quality up front to decide games, whether it's what he starts or what he has coming in off the bench. And that's my case for Roma, that they can play a certain way and that they can adjust how they, organize their attackers, to get in position to win games when it gets deep into games. It didn't happen this time against Lazio, but I kind of trust how they're set up more than I trust some of the other teams. Now, to the point of the chat, I fancy Atalanta to still be up there and with the way they're playing. I just worry that at some point they fall apart defensively.
Yeah.
So because they tend to traditionally each year. So I think if I've got to, so I'm going to stand by, and I'm mainly standing by it because I picked Roma 4th, and I'm not. I'm just going to die on that hill for the rest of the season. So
good on you. Good on you.
Oh man, so let's bundle the next two teams that we're going to talk about. Inter go on and beat Frosinone, and Federico Dimarco with, oh dear Lord, the leader in the clubhouse for goal of the season. That was just something sensational. And then Juve beat Cagliari 2-1.
Mm-hmm.
Let's ask this question first. Inter 31 points, Juve 29 points. The next closest team is Milan on 23. Can we say after 12 games that this is already a two-horse race for the Scudetto?
I kind of alluded to it earlier. I think you can, because I don't. Inter and Juve are playing very consistent at the moment. Every other club is not, and until one of these teams figures it out and gets on a run, you gotta have to catch up to Inter, Juve, and they have to falter. And at the moment, it's a 6-point gap just to second place. I think it's a two-horse race. I didn't think there was going to be a runaway this year, but we may have Inter Juve just pull away from everybody. It's very plausible. So, yeah, I'm going to say it's a two-horse race. What do you think?
I agree. Just because the optics suggest it. Not only are they accumulating the most points, not only are they comfortably ahead of everybody else right now, but I don't see how the other teams do what's necessary to gain the points on them. You know, Inter are beating the bottom half teams. Milan are not. Napoli are not.
Yep.
Okay. Atalanta are not. They're not beating all of them. Okay. Juve are finding ways to, they're playing Allegri ball and they're finding ways to win.
Mm-hmm.
Vincent thinks Milan are still in the title race, but just barely. And I think we saw who drops out of, I think it was Eric that said it, that whoever drops out of Europe first has it. Whoever's dropping out of Europe first has an advantage as well. Yeah. It wasn't Napoli last season was the exception, but the 2 seasons prior to that, Milan and Inter were both bounced out of the group stage
and won the league
and could focus on the league and go on and win the league. There is something to say about that.
Juventus fall out of Champions League every year, and they win the league for 9 years.
Well, they fell out of the Champions League. They fell out of the Champions League this summer. So
that too.
Yeah. Cue the Ko Come Mai song.
Oh
my
goodness.
Kids love that, by the way. I played that for them, and they just my son will sing that on a continuous loop. And he used to support Juve, and now he doesn't like him anymore. So he just says, he says, I can't support a team that cheats. So sorry for my Juve friends out there. So then let's take it a step further. We think that this is the optics just suggests that, and maybe somebody comes out of nowhere and makes this interesting. And then maybe the other shoe drops in. Inter has an injury crisis and can't put out the same consistent product that they're comfortable with, or Juve can't put the same consistent product out that they're comfortable with. Those things can happen. There's still 26 games left. We're only a third of the way through the season.
Yeah.
But let's ask this. We've been anointing Inter pretty much as champions-elect since the start of the season. We predicted them for the title. How credible is Juve's title challenge here?
I say it's very credible because in our initial preseason pick, I picked Juve to win the Scudetto. And once I got to see the teams, let's say Inter, how they're playing, I'm like, Inter's going to win it. I still think very highly of Inter. But to everyone's point, Juve doesn't play in Europe, and Allegri's gotten back to brass tactics of what got him the 9 Scudetto, or he got 7 of them or whatever it was. Juve are just playing much better defensively. Bremer is finally playing like the Bremer we saw from Torino now, where he's scoring goals, being stout defensively. The team, they think defense first, and they're actually capitalizing on their goals, and it's not just Vlahovic trying to score all the goals. Vlahovic and Chiesa are not doing much in terms of the score sheet. It's everybody else contributing. Wait till those two guys kick in, and then it'll be okay. Look, Juve are serious, and Juve have their moments where they win 3-4-0 in the games or score a lot of goals. But the defense, this is the first goal they gave up this weekend in 9 games, something like that, something crazy, 10 games. And so this Juve team is absolutely legit, I think, with no outside distractions like Inter currently have. Barring any big injuries, I think they're absolutely going to be a viable contender for the Scudetto, and they could easily win it. Because, like you said, say Inter go deep in Champions League, they're going to be focused on that, and especially so close being last year. Juve got no distractions. Why not? And all it takes is a slip up for Inter. We saw last year when Napoli, yes, they had a big lead for most of the season, but as other teams are getting more distracted, they start pulling away and point by point taking from everybody else. And next thing you know, they're 18 points ahead of everybody. So it very well could happen like this with this Juventus team. They're sneakily good. It's no outside of Chiesa and Vlahovic. You're like, okay, it's an okay team. Szczesny obviously is fantastic, but it's an okay team. The midfield's okay. Defense is okay. The rest of the attack's okay, but Allegri knows how to win. He knows how to get points, and that's what's important. As we said before, defense wins championships, and the two of the best defenses in the league are Inter and Juventus.
What if I told you, those in the betting, those that are interested in placing a wager, Juve at home against Inter is a plus 230 underdog, plus 230 to win.
Wow.
So if you bet $100 on Juve right now and they win, you win $230. $230 profit. That is shocking to me.
Time to put some money in here.
I'm half tempted to send my my brother's brother-in-law over to the casino where we have sportsbook and say, let's slap 100 on that. Draws at plus 232. Inter's plus 115 as a favorite. So if you think Inter can go to if you think Inter can go to the J and win, you're going to get plus money on that.
The odds will only get tighter as the game gets closer. So I mean, I might put some money on Juve tonight, just take a chance and get some money.
Yeah, I'm going to see if my friend is available. We can talk about this a little bit, but Juve Inter in November, and we're going to have is a friend of mine, Giovanni Vidal, who knows a lot about betting on football, daily fantasy soccer, and things like that. We're going to get him as a guest at some point to kind of talk about that, and maybe some of the trends in Serie A for some of those that like to wager on that, and give some tips and things like that he sees. So we'll hook that up soon. But I'm going to just ask him. I'll ask him. I'll let you know if he answers. So That is very, very tempting. So under 2.5 because it's a Allegri ball. I can buy that. The other 2.5 is probably going to be minus money anyway. So
yeah,
you're probably going to be bet 100 to win back 80.
Not worth it.
So 100 to win 180 basically. So would be kind of in the realm of what I would think the under is on the 2.5. I think that they're going to expect that. So. But yeah, that's going to be a heck of a game. Do you want to give an early prediction on what you think happens there when we all come back, or is 12 days away a little too early for you to figure it out?
Too early to tell. I'm going to say it's at the J, right? I'm going to say, early money. Early money is on Inter stealing it. That's early money.
Who has more possession in this game? That's what I want to know.
You got. Both teams don't want it. Zaghi certainly doesn't want it, but it's going to be Inter. It's going to be Inter.
Yeah.
Because Allegri will throw the ball away. He's like Mourinho. He's like, here, take the ball. I don't want it.
Yeah.
Not to say that both teams are going to have good spells, for sure, but I think Inter will be forced to have more of the ball in this one. But it'll be an interesting. Hopefully, it's better than the DerbyDillaCapitale for sure.
Gotcha. Oh man. I'm tempted to say just a 1-1 draw right now because I'm just too chicken to pick a winner right now. I want to see what shape all these players are in coming back from their internationals too.
For sure.
So, but you're telling me right now I could bet Juve at plus 230. I'd probably go for it.
I would rather bet that Dimarco wins goal of the season. Right now, that goal was fantastic. Is it the best halfway goal I've seen ever? No, but that was a sensational goal. He absolutely did it on purpose, and it was a screamer of a shot as well. They call it. Hey, the best part of watching. So I think both Inter and Serie A have all the angles of it. The best one for me is watching the reaction of the goalkeeper Frosinone because his face is like, "What the fuck am I gonna do? I couldn't do anything about that shit." Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I know. I also think this is a 2-horse race because these are the two best defenses in the league.
Yeah.
I think we're going to talk about by the time we get to about 2/3 of the season, Roma's going to be up there statistically with them defensively in terms of goals conceded. They're going to be close. But it's still going to be Juve and Inter as the two best defenses in the league. Well organized, and especially in Juve's case, they rarely give you anything easy or cheap. And I think that matters right now with how this season is going.
I will say, in terms of talk about the best defenses in the league this year, don't sleep on Bologna sneaking in there as well. They are sneakily good defense at the moment.
Sure.
Now they're not Juve, Inter level, or even a Roma level, but Moto's got them playing at them. Thiago Moto's got them playing at the moment. So keep an eye on Bologna's defense this year. In terms of statistics, I'm talking about how they end up playing, who the talent and all that stuff. I'm just saying statistic wise.
Yep. Okay. So that was our thought on the top two right now, because I think it's going to be fascinating. And right now they're separating themselves from the rest of the pack. And I think it is a 2-horse race. And I think and to answer the question, I'm with you. I think Juventus is a legit challenger for the way they're playing, the way they're defending. They're not giving a whole lot away to opponents, and they're finding ways to win. It's Allegri ball. So, yeah. And I always get a laugh when Bonetti puts out the when Allegri did I guess it was Italy's version of Dancing with the Stars.
Yes.
It's the best way I can describe it. So, let's have a quick chat just to squeeze it in. And it wasn't on our topic list, but we'll talk about it. Okay, so we talked about 5 through 10. Let's talk about 11 through 16. Torino, Frosinone, Genoa, Lecce, Sassuolo, Udinese. Rough group right now, really, when you take a look at them.
Their team is expected at the bottom.
Yeah. Any of these teams that you think might be a threat for top half, and if it was, who would you pick?
Man, I mean, the pick you want to say is Torino, because of all the teams listed, they have probably the most talent, and Juric has in historically done much better than them. But you can't sleep on Lecce. Frosinone is doing a fantastic job this year. Yes, they lost to Inter 2-0, but they played really well in that game. They had their chances. Sommer had to make some big saves. Sassuolo, on their good days, can play with anybody, but they have bad days. They're Jekyll and Hyde, very much so. And Udinese, we'll see what they do with their manager Bob. They've always played well defensively. Just couldn't do anything offensively. Now under Cioffi, with him back, they're doing better now, right? And they gave Atalanta all they can handle. So I'm going to say Torino still. I would not be surprised if a Frosinone or Lecce jump in there.
Yep.
As a surprise.
I actually don't think any of these. I think these teams are 11 through 16, and you might even make the suggestion that at least one of them is going to get mired in the relegation battle. So I don't think any of them. I think Monza's better than all of these teams.
I agree.
I'm a big fan of Andrea Colpani. I'm glad he got a call up to the Azzurri. We'll talk about them in a little bit. If we went just on talent, Torino. Sure. But the results have been very inconsistent.
Yep.
If you want to talk about a team that's trending up, Genoa. Yeah. This was a team that looked like a disaster defensively when they started the season, and Alberto Gilardino's made some very nice adjustments.
Yes, he has.
They're playing better. As long as Albert Gudmundsson stays healthy, he's creating a lot for them. And they're finding ways to get results against the teams around them. It's going to be interesting to see if they might be able to claim a scalp here from one of these from any of these teams in the top half. It's going to be tough. Yeah. It's going to be tough for them, because I don't think and at the end of the day, I don't think they have the horses to keep up with many of those teams up there. But Reteghi's been decent. You've got Malinovsky, who's trying to get his career back on track, and he's shown some moments. And now they have a system that they're playing in that's a lot more effective than what they were playing with at the beginning of the season. So that's a credit to Gilardino for his ability to adjust.
Absolutely.
So, because how many and we talked about this before, we've exhausted it. How many managers in this team will just refuse to adjust? They'll just play their same system, and they'll just try to jam square pegs into round holes.
Yeah, Thiago Motta the first time at Genoa, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Whose input I would love to hear right now, and maybe we'll get it during the international break. Our friends over the Lecce boys, over UK fan club there, curious to see how they feel about the season going on so far. So maybe we can get them in here during the international break. So Frank and I will talk off air, but that'd be cool to see how the guys are doing. And Lecce are a team that absolutely could sneak in there with Genoa. Absolutely. So full credit to Gilardino and De Versa for the work that they've done with their clubs this year. And if Genoa can get consistency out of the striker, have a compliment to Retegui, maybe Puskás or someone else steps in there to help Goodmanson, because Goodmanson can't do everything himself. Genoa really is a viable threat. I agree with you.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it'll happen. I like how they've been trending.
Yeah, I agree.
If you're really wanting to look on Eric Williams, I'm leaning on Pisa. Okay, Eric, you can go.
Well, Armenia and Teresa has a good question. He's like, who do you want to see back next year? Parma, who's in the running, Venezia, Palermo, Pisa, I guess. It's an interesting question. I mean, because for me, I think you're going to be the same way as Palermo. Now, all these clubs are great, but Palermo is like one of those clubs, all those days with Mikuli and all those other guys. I mean, with the crazy owner that they don't have anymore. Palermo back in the league would be fantastic. We need a good Southern team like that to get back. The stadium was amazing. Who would you like to see back next year?
Well, being half Sicilian, I'd say Palermo. So I've always had a soft spot for them.
Or just get the low hanging fruit like Eric and say, lean on Pisa.
Chirac coming in talking about Newcastle, Dortmund, Marseille. I wonder if he's answering our question.
The passion, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Newcastle. Yeah. I mean,
Marseille certainly.
No doubt about it.
Dortmund
you just no. Come on. You were ready to refuse to bring that name up.
It's been an hour and a half now. I kind of softened up. Okay.
Yeah, you're getting soft in your old age.
I am. Bari would be good to see. Amazing seater there. 50,000 seater there.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with those Serie B teams. But Parma, Venezia, Palermo. Venezia for the kits and for the marketing. That was a fun.
Yeah.
That was a fun experience with them last year.
Yeah.
So finally, the bottom four: Empoli, Cagliari, Verona, Salernitana. If you had to pick one to survive, who would it be?
Jeez. I would. Man, it's hard because I think each of them on their day have managed to get a scalp. Obviously, Empoli did it recently. I like the way Empoli play just because they are willing to attack the ball. Now, that could be to their detriment because they give up a lot of goals, but they're willing to take chances and go for the goals. And under Azzurri, they seem to have found some new life. Cagliari has come on in the last couple of weeks. Hellas has had their moments. Salernitana have some nice players, right? Buladia, Mehmet Ochoa, but for me, if I'm picking one between all these teams, I'm going to say Empoli.
I think Andrea Azzurri has straightened it out.
I'll go down.
all four of them.
It could happen.
Didn't there used to be 4 teams get relegated?
It may have.
At one point. So, Empoli is the most practical. I mean, I would love to see Ranieri pull this off with Cagliari. Salernitana confirmed their relegation by hiring people Inzaghi to be their manager.
I know. I like Cagliari too, for sure.
I've been predicting Verona to get relegated, so
they need to go.
I guess for our friend George, let's just say Cagliari.
All right, there we go.
Okay, 17th sympathy relegation.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Cagliari survive, and then
good.
Luvumbo makes it to a top team in Serie A. How about that?
And then they go down the next year.
All right, George. We gave you a year.
Yep. So let's see if we can keep them up. So, all right. Well, so those were our. I mean, we don't even need to talk about goals of the week. Let's not waste any time. I already said Dimarco, goal of the year candidate. It's not like any other goals were scored this weekend after that. So
he is the clear leader in the clubhouse in terms of goal of the year, because I can't think of anything that's really outstanding as that.
Oh, for sure.
So
yeah, there's no dancing around that one. You go straight to it. So yeah, for me it's Dimarco. Somebody called him DeFartco was that Morelli that did that? It's just
Maybe
don't be
he calls everybody fart.
Yeah, he's got a fascination with flatulence. So anyway, all right. So that was our roundup of what's going on. Kind of an all-encompassing of the first 12 games. Now that we're hitting an international break, and speaking of international break, it's time to take a look at the Azzurri call-ups, Richard.
Yeah, so we got the lineups here on the screen. So the call-ups for the Azzurri, first to start with goalkeeper Donnarumma, Meret, Provedel, Vicario. No surprises there. Defense, yeah, Cerbi, Bastoni, Buongiorno, Calabria. So much for that. He got injured. You asked why he came off of the game. He got injured. Cambiaso, Darmian, Di Lorenzo, Dimarco, Gatti, Toloi. Midfield, Barella, Bonaventura, Colpani, Cristante, Fratesi, Jorginho, Locatelli. And the attack, you got Berardi, Chiesa, El Shaarawy, Kane, Politano, Raspadori, Scamacca, and Zaniolo.
All right.
Thoughts?
Toloi still gets into this team for some reason. I mean, he's solid for Atalanta. He has not had a good Italy game ever.
Yep.
At some point you just have to cut bait and say, all right, we got to give somebody else a look at this. So
is he the new Bonucci?
Yeah. I mean, why not Romagnoli? Right?
Yeah.
Instead of Toloi. That's the one beef I have there. Central midfield, Jorginho, why? He hardly plays for Arsenal. Hardly. You're basically taking him because you need some people in this camp that have some experience. And that's what Jorginho brings you. And then I'm looking at the attack. I really don't have any complaints about the attack. I think that's fine. No. So Raffaele at Italiano Calcio, and I think he said this was from Gazzetta dello Sport. The possible Italy lineup against North Macedonia on Friday. It's going to be a 4-3-3. Donnarumma in goal. Darmian, Acerbi, Bastoni, Dimarco. Okay, fine. I like an all Inter back four, even though they play a back three. I want guys that are defending well, and all four of those guys are defending well together, and they play together in the same club. That matters. Barella, another Inter guy. Jorginho and Bonaventura, and then they've got Kane and Politano flanking Raspadori, but in parentheses they've got El Shaarawy and Berardi flanking Scamacca. What do you make of that? I mean, Jorginho, here's the only reason why you play Jorginho in a game as important as this. You know you're going to have the ball against North Macedonia. You want to come back to a guy that's in that deep-lying role that's going to be able to spray the ball around and help you keep it. Because let's face it, under Mancini, Jorginho was good at that. Was relatively good at that.
Yep.
Where he was rubbish was defending. And I mean, in the qualifier, I'm still having nightmares about that first qualifier against England where they just completely ran past him. North Macedonia don't necessarily have the athletes that England have, but they have some technical players, and it's Bardi chief among them. And then they have some guys in there that have some Serie A experience. But if this was the 4-3-3, how confident would you be in Italy getting a result with this starting lineup?
The only thing missing from that midfield is Verratti, right?
Right.
I get. This is such a, as we mentioned before, how the loss to England wasn't as bad because these next two games are massively important, and they're must win. So I get why they brought Jorginho because, like you said, the experience in all this. Now I don't know if I want him to start necessarily, but if this is what happens, so be it. I like going with the Inter back four because one of the best defenses in the league, and they're all familiar with each other, so they're gonna be able to good communication with each other. Midfield, obviously having Barella in there. Bonaventura, I'm glad he started because he's on fire at the best form of his career. So it's good to see him in there. Raspadori, same thing. He just captain clutch, I think, for me. He just knows how to get the ball, important goals, and for them, pairing him up with Politano. Berardi, you can say Berardi has, when he's on, he is fantastic. But I think that combination between Politano and Raspadori could prove very well. And since you got two small guys, having a guy like Kane in there instead of El Shaarawy makes sense, because if you need to make him as a focal point, you can, swapping him and Raspadori, switching positions. Kane's got a lot of pace, and he could mix very well with Raspadori, I think. So the big key question mark for me is kind of like you, is Jorginho. Why is he in there? Yes, you want to distribute the ball. You expect they're going to have more possession than North Macedonia. But again, there's some other options I think you could put in there in that midfield that would help do the same thing and maybe be more solid defensively. But we'll see. I mean, this is a crucial game for the Azzurri. Maybe you put Jorginho on a short leash, and if it's not working at halftime, you pull him. But I don't know if Spalletti's going to do that. But what are your thoughts?
The problem is the alternatives in that role are Locatelli or Cristante, and Cristante hasn't worked either. And Locatelli, this isn't quite the Juventus setup where he can play that role.
Yeah.
So I think at this point, at this point you have nothing else to lose here at that position. So that's the one that I'm toughest on. I'd rather Berardi over Politano, but I get the Politano call because he's been in really good form for Napoli.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's one saving grace for Garcia's tenure, is that he actually got some consistency out of the right wing in that Napoli setup with Politano. Politano was playing really well under him. But I slightly favor Berardi.
How about Frattesi? Do you think Frattesi could be in the Jorginho role?
No, Fratesi's
more like
to
a
the
Barella
side.
role.
Yeah, I can't get there with him. Who are the rest of the midfield? Let's go back to the graphic.
So the midfielders, you got Barella, Bonaventura, Colpani, Cristante, Frattesi, Jorginho, Locatelli. So I mean,
we're stuck with Jorginho then, because you definitely can't put Colpani there. So
if this was a game where we knew that the Azzurri would have 80% of possession, Locatelli, I think you'd do good in there because you got some guys who can cover for Barella and Bonaventura. But this is going to be a fairly even game, you would imagine. North Macedonia has always been a thorn for the Azzurri, and so
they knocked him out of World Cup qualifying last time.
Exactly. So Jorginho has experience out of all those guys, and he can facilitate the ball. You're hoping that defensively, Barella is going to obviously help out, and Bonaventura is going to help out as well because Jorginho can't do it alone. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see, but that might be the best of the bunch that we got, right?
Yeah. You got to hope for superiority in possession if this is the lineup that they're going with. You've got to go with Jorginho. I think Italy win with this lineup, to be honest with you. We're going to be gritting teeth, but it's going to be a 2-1 win. They're going to ride it out. They're going to get the 3 points, which set the stage, which I believe if that happens, then a draw at Ukraine on the last day gets them in because it'll be head-to-head between Italy and Ukraine.
Okay.
Because I think Italy would be ahead of Ukraine on goal difference as well. So I think they've got all the tiebreakers covered, in fact. So so this is the important game. You got to win this, and then you can't even worry about Ukraine. The only other – I don't have many other objections to the Azzurri. I don't like the Toloi call. I'd rather Romagnoli get that. The goalkeepers are pretty straightforward. And the midfielders, I really can't fault that selection either. I don't think there's really anybody else that you can change. If we want to really nitpick, Richard, on the attack,
Zaniolo?
No. How do we not find a place for Grifo? He's been really good for Freiburg, particularly in the Europa League. I haven't watched enough Bundesliga, and I think he's been effective there too. But he would probably be the one out of the attack that I think is a snub here.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's a fair shout. But I mean, I think the attack has more options in the midfield currently. It's kind of like Eric says, it's not a bad midfield. It just has no wow factor in there. I think you have a better chance of that in the attack with, guys like Escamacca on his game. Raspadori is obviously the wow guy for me. But Kane on his day, obviously Chiesa. Hopefully, Chiesa comes off the bench and ignites that offense. But Berardi has a capability as well, right? So I like that. You have those guys coming off in super subs versus the central midfielders. Is like, okay, well, you got some plug and play guys, but Barella is going to be your main workhorse on that right side, and then hopefully someone like a Copani comes in for Bonaventura, or I doubt he comes in, but maybe a Fratesi, more than likely. Maybe Locatelli comes in there and helps him out. But yeah, if Jorginho goes down too, it's Cristante or bust, I guess, or maybe Locatelli or bust.
Yep, agreed. So let's wrap it up now. We have the world's most popular hashtag game to finish it off, Richard. It's time for Who Won Calcio Twitter.
You would think I'd be prepared for this, but apparently I'm not. Where is that page?
What's the date that we're even starting on?
If I can find my page, and I will let you know. Oh, there we go. Matteo Bonetti. I just saw his name. Where did it go?
Oh, the highlight. Charles Catalari highlights for
Yes. So that is it. So let's get going there. Tone deaf Charles Catalari. The new Kevin De Bruyne.
What was that?
Ella. Hey, no. Sorry, Charles.
Oh, okay. Martino Puccio, Ruben Loftus-Cheek ball carrying highlights versus PSG. One of the angriest American football runs you're ever going to see.
One of the greatest runs in history.
Yeah.
God.
Now. He's dancing his way for the touchdown.
Oh,
and astonishing how Seattle doesn't have 2 Super Bowl wins.
I know. All right, next, Carlo Garganese. It's Milan and PSG every time the other team attacks.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah. Fair enough.
All right. So our friend at Wise Old BHJ, Richard, this motherfucker, every single time his job and backer against the wall, he pulls a masterclass out of his ass. And Brian saying maybe Zlatan's job is going to be to threaten to kill him before every match.
There you go. Little motivation.
That would probably be relatively motivating now, wouldn't it?
Exactly. Moving on, Zoe Gex says Mbappe finally lived his dream playing for Milan at San Siro.
Where is this?
There
it is. Okay, I got you. Okay. All right. Moving on. Uncle Sharma, he got dunked on disrespectfully again. Giroud heading on Skriniar.
Yeah, did it before as well. But yeah,
Giroud suspended for 2 games for the next 2 Serie A games for Milan for talking about the referee's mama in that Lecce game that got him sent off.
Got 2 yellows in a matter of seconds for doing that. But yeah. Going back to Matteo Bonetti, if Reinders could put his shots on target, he'd be really good and win the Ballon d'Or.
All right, our friend at Nick Diani, Serie A clubs every transfer window.
Give us some financial support. Okay, please give us a credit, and we will give you back money.
Zelensky.
oh my goodness! All right, Sempre Milan. It's AC Milan owner Jerry Cardinale at full time. All right.
Let's see. Moving on. At AC Milan. AC Milan is how it really went. Video courtesy of Green Italy.
Vedrai che ce lo tolgono. Ce lo tolgono sicuro.
Così è brutto, ragazzi. C'è soprattutto un pubblico meraviglioso, un pubblico.
What was this about?
So Inter posted a video and it showed it at a picture. It said, "Hey, Green Day, we really like your outfit because they're holding up a jersey." So it made it seem like Green Day was a fan of Inter. But then Milan went to VAR and it showed the video. The actual video was him holding up both jerseys, Milan and Inter. And ultimately, Milan got the fan favorite by the crowd. So
nice.
They're just Milan making fun of Inter, which is funny.
Okay. All right. So moving on.
All right, moving on. Calcio England said a lion has escaped from a circus in La Dispoli near Rome, which is currently wandering the residential streets. And so Michael Lisi says Zlatan on his way to sign his new deal at Milan.
He jumped all over that one, didn't he?
He did.
All right. At our friend Big Show, Kvara highlights 23-24 defending Scudetto champ and Ballon d'Or nominee. All goals, dribbles, assists. Better than Diego Maradona.
Oh my goodness!
Love how he picked. Love how he picked the graphic of him dancing. He's got and he's got dirt on his shorts, kind of in the area where you shit.
You know,
He's
funny
trying to
enough,
say
I
something.
think this came from the Napoli TikTok. No
Did it?
joke. I think it did, which is sad.
Wow.
But true.
Okay.
Moving on, big show again. It's Napoli fans since winning Scudetto.
This fucking sucks.
Wally. This fucking sucks. That was good.
I think that's the leader in the clubhouse right now.
Yes. And then lastly, I kind of alluded to this. Aurelio De Laurentiis gets a nomination because he says, Ben Tornato Walter. He said this before he fired Rudi Garcia. Like, what the fuck?
Unbelievable. I think Big Show has done it again.
The last one, this fucking sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that one.
Poor Wally. he ate something like hot or something that day or whatever. But that's funny. That's funny. All right. CDK has more goals than Jovic has shots this season. Yes, that is sad but true. Sad but true. But yeah. Anyway. All right. Well, while you write that, yeah, we're gonna try to link up with our boys, the UK fan club from Lecce. Haven't talked to them in a good minute. They're sitting 13th in the table, so let's see how they're doing. But we got the international break, so we're gonna take a little break here. Yeah, games are on Friday and Monday. Not ideal for me for watching, at least. Some of us got jobs, right? But yeah, it should be entertaining games. 2 must-win games. We want to get back into European competition, so let's see how the Azzurri do, and hopefully they get 2 wins here, or at least get enough to get into the Euros. So we'll see, Frank. But I'm optimistic.
Yep. You know, by the way, it's I'll tell you this. The Lecce fan UK is actually, there's been demand for that. I know Lisi has direct messaged both of us saying, "Hey, get those guys back on.
Yeah,
they're a good interview." So, and we've had others that said the same thing. Said, "Yeah, get those guys. Yeah, it'd be great to hear from them again." So,
yeah.
And they're friends of the podcast, and we appreciate their support. So, yeah, we're going to try to see if we can make that work and get an interview going with them here during this international break. So, speaking of which, unless we have to really do something to talk about the Azzurri, I think we're going to take next week off, seeing that it's internationals and Thanksgiving and all that fun stuff, right?
Yeah, if Mazzarri gets fired in an international break, we will be live.
Yeah. Something, yeah, you know. So unless something crazy happens, we're gonna take our siesta from the international break, and we may, when we return following the Thanksgiving holiday, we'll touch on the Azzurri's performance at that point.
Thanksgiving is coming up next week. My goodness, time flies.
Yeah, it does. Thanksgiving. So we will be taking siesta next week, but we will be back 2 weeks from today at 9 p.m. Eastern. So please hit that notification bell, as we said, so that you can be alert. And by the way, hit the like. Great time for you to hit the like if you've watched this and enjoyed it. So, and with that, we'll put a bow on this edition of Serie A Sit Down, where we have our own channel on Apple Podcasts and SoundCloud. We're also on Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio. Wherever there's podcasts, there is Serie A Sit Down. At Serie A Sit Down on Twitter or Instagram. Hit us up with your thoughts. Hit us up with anything that you want us to touch on in future podcasts. We'd be happy to, if there's somebody out there in the Calcio streets that knows their shit and you think we need to get them on there and talk about them, please pass it along. We'd love to, we'll obviously put them through the vetting process we put through everybody else. It's not a really big vetting process, by the way. But nonetheless, we will, be interested. So we're also on Facebook, so check us out there. And again, please subscribe to this video, hit that notification bell, drop the like. We would appreciate that very much. Chat, awesome as always. You guys rock. To all of our American friends listening, we hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Eat without shame. I'm going to. Drink without shame. I'm going to. So I'll probably put on a good 5 pounds here, in about 9 days' time. So,
Yep, for sure.
All right. So we'll catch up with you guys again here 2 weeks from now. We'll have a lot to discuss. We'll be back dealing with Champions League competitions, 3 big games when the Calcio resumes. Italy, Milan, Fiorentina, Napoli at Atalanta, Juve, Inter. So we jump right back into it. So we will need the break. So because we're going to need to ramp up for it. But until then, for Richard, I'm Frank. Thank you all for listening to Serie A Sit Down, a podcast of World Football Index. And as always, be sure you're telling your paisans about us. Ciao.
Sul fondo mette in mezzo la caccia di Lorenzo e il Napoli è passato.